Arthur's family truth. The doctor didn't raise his voice. He just looked at my chart and said quietly, "This blood type doesn't match your records." I didn't react. For years, everything in my file had said the same thing, and no one had ever questioned it. Then he added, "And it doesn't match your children either." That's when I realized whatever was written about me had already been changed long before I walked into that room. That wasn't how it started. He sat down, set the folder on the table carefully. "Scott," he said, "your blood work came back. There's something we need to talk about." I sat up. "What is it?" "Cholesterol. Your levels are excellent. Heart, liver, kidneys, all good." He paused. "It's your blood type." He told me my results came back AB negative, rare, about 1% of the population. Then he pulled out an older sheet. Every medical record I had going back to 1987 listed me as O positive. He explained that blood types don't change. Either there had been a clerical error spanning nearly 40 years, or the original records were wrong. I still didn't understand why it mattered. Then he asked about my kids. Donna, 28, Larry, 25. Both O positive I knew because Donna had donated blood in high school and Larry had needed stitches after a dirt bike accident when he was 16. Dr. Stone leaned forward. "Scott, if you are AB negative, it is genetically impossible for you to have O positive children. An AB parent cannot pass on the O allele. It's not a gray area, it's basic biology." I sat there for a moment, then I heard myself laugh, short and hard. Didn't feel like mine. He wanted to run the test again. "Different lab, expedited processing." I said fine. I drove home on autopilot. Sandra's Lexus was in the driveway. I could see her through the kitchen window moving around, probably starting dinner. 38 years of marriage. I knew her routines better than I knew my own job sites. I sat in that truck for 11 minutes. When I finally went inside, Sandra looked up and smiled. "How was Dr. Stone? Did he tell you to stop eating bacon? Clean bill of health?" I said, "Everything's fine." She kissed my cheek, told me Donna had called. That was the first lie I told her. It came out smooth and easy. I didn't expect that. 6 days later, Dr. Stone confirmed it, AB negative. Verified by an independent lab, no connection to Cedar Valley. He showed me my records, systematically altered, going back to 1987, insurance forms, surgical consent documents, a donor card. Every single entry said O positive. Someone had changed them, all of them. Someone who had access to the system and knew exactly what they were doing. Sandra's younger sister Beverly Burke had worked as a lab technician at Cedar Valley Medical from 1991 through 2002. She had that access. She knew those systems. Dr. Stone believed the alterations had been made retroactively, someone going back through records in the mid-1990s and changing each entry one by one to create a clean, consistent history. I asked for copies of everything. I drove back to the office and sat at my desk for a long time. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, I got up and went to the home office, a room I barely used anymore. Sandra kept it organized. She had a small floor safe behind the bookshelf. I had set the combination years ago. Her birthday, I never changed it. I tried it on a feeling. It opened inside. The house deed, some old insurance documents, her mother's jewelry, and at the back, a bundle of envelopes held together with a rubber band that turned to dust when I touched it. The handwriting was Patrick Dawson's. I knew it immediately. Patrick, my best friend since 1991. The man who had been my best man at our 20th anniversary vow renewal. The OBGYN who had delivered both of my children. Or rather, both of his children, while I stood in that delivery room holding Sandra's hand and crying because I thought I was the luckiest man alive. I read every letter. The first one was April 1996. He wrote about a weekend I'd been at a construction conference in Seattle. The second, from September that same year, talked about being there for our daughter's birth, officially as the attending physician on call. Planned that way. A letter from early 2000 talked about our son. And in a letter from 2010, one line that I've thought about almost every day since. He bought me a beer last night and went on about how proud he was of the kids. I nodded and smiled and felt like the worst man alive, but not bad enough to stop. I photographed every letter, every date visible, every word captured. Then I sat on the floor of that office until the sun came up. I called my brother Gerald the next morning. He'd spent 22 years with the Portland PD before retiring. I didn't tell him everything on the phone. I just said I needed him at my office. He was there in 40 minutes. I laid the folders out on my desk. Dr. Stone's reports, the photocopied letters. The altered records going back to 1987. Gerald went through everything without saying a word. He's not a man who rushes. He read each letter, looked at each document, set it down carefully. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Patrick Dawson, he said. Not a question, just the name out loud like he was hearing it for the first time. Yeah, I said. You're Patrick? The guy who was your best man. Same one. He looked at me. What do you need? That was it. No lecture. No. Are you sure? Just what do you need? I told him I needed a lawyer and a private investigator, people he trusted, people who were good. He pulled out his phone and made 2 calls right there. Roy Griffin, family law attorney, Pearl District Office, 30 years of experience. And Neil Crawford, retired Portland PD, ran his own PI firm out of Southeast. Gerald had worked cases with Neil for years. If there's something to find, Gerald said, Neil finds it. I met with both of them within 48 hours. Roy was direct. No wasted words. You have grounds for fraud, adultery, and conspiracy. The falsified medical records alone could carry criminal charges. Beverly Burke could lose her credentials and face prosecution. He looked at my folders. What do you want out of this? Everything documented, I said. Airtight. I want it to hold up in any room I walk into. Then we start building now. Neil started surveillance the next morning. 3 days in, he sent me a text. Sandra and Beverly had met at Riverside Park, a 90-minute conversation that Neil described as heated. He recommended immediate follow-up. But the recording that changed everything came from our mountain cabin. Neil had placed audio equipment inside before the meeting on April 10th. I didn't know they were all going up there. Sandra, Patrick, Donna, and Larry. All 4 of them, together, same day, same table. Neil confirmed it with footage from a camera on the access road. I listened to that recording in Neil's office. Gerald sat beside me the whole time. Sandra's voice came through first. She said I'd been acting different since my doctor's appointment, watching them, asking questions about the kids' medical histories. Patrick's voice, careful, nervous. Could he know about the blood type? Then Larry. And this is the part I've replayed more times than I can count. His voice was flat, business-like. Like he was running a project meeting. We've been planning for 8 months. Time to accelerate. If we get 2 or 3 doctors to sign off on cognitive decline, we can petition for power of attorney. Mom gets control of his finances. The company gets liquidated before he has a chance to change anything. Sandra asked who else could sign off besides Patrick. Donna answered, I've been documenting behavioral changes for 6 months. Forgetfulness, confusion, mood swings. I've already mentioned to colleagues at the hospital that I'm worried about a family member. If he ever gets formally evaluated, there's already a narrative in place. I'd never been confused a day in my life. I'd never gotten lost. I'd never forgotten a contract deadline or a client's name. My own daughter, a nurse, had been quietly building a fake medical history around me. For months. While I was paying her student loans, Gerald put his hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. There wasn't much to say. I sat in that office chair for a while, after Neil stopped the playback. Then I told Neil to get me copies of everything, every second of audio, every frame of footage, and I told Roy to start the clock. The DNA kits came that same week. Getting the samples wasn't complicated. Donna had left a hairbrush at the house from her last visit. Larry's old toothbrush was still in the guest bathroom cabinet. I mailed both samples to Pacific Diagnostics Lab in Beaverton. Chain of custody documentation, expedited processing, 3 comparisons. For Patrick's sample, I sat across from him at our usual bar on a Thursday evening. Same place we'd been going for 30 years. Same bar stools, same bartender. He was working too hard at being relaxed. I could see it. I'd spent decades reading people across negotiating tables. When he went to the restroom, I bagged his pint glass, sealed it, put it in my jacket pocket. We talked for another hour about basketball and his daughter's college applications. I bought the last round. Told him I had an early job site meeting the next morning. Drive safe, he said. Same time next week. Absolutely, I said. I drove straight to the lab and dropped everything through the after-hours slot. 4 days later, the call came in while I was at my desk reviewing a bid proposal. Scott Morrison, 0.00% probability of paternity. Donna Harmon. Larry Harmon. Both of them, Patrick Dawson, 99.97% for Donna, 99.98% for Larry. I printed 4 copies, sent one to Roy, locked one in my office safe. sat with the other two and read them again, twice, slowly, like the numbers might rearrange themselves. They didn't. I called Gerald, told him the results. He was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said finally, now we move. 3 days after the DNA results came back, my phone rang from an unknown number. Early morning, before 8, Mr. Harmon. A woman's voice, controlled, careful. My name is Gloria Dawson. I believe you know my husband Patrick. I set down my coffee. She'd known for 5 years, found the evidence herself in 2020 emails, financial records, a pattern she couldn't explain away. She hired her own investigator, built her own case quietly, and said nothing. In January 2021, she had gotten Patrick to sign a post-nuptial agreement. If she could ever prove he'd cheated again after that date, he owed her $7,500,000. She had presented it as a formality. He signed it without pushback because he thought he was careful enough. He wasn't. She also had bank statements. Patrick had been transferring $28,000 a year to Sandra, listed as consulting fees for a business that didn't exist. It started in 2009 when Sandra told him she needed money after the recession hit our savings hard. Before that, he'd paid in cash and gifts, 12 years of transfers. $336,000 total. My investigator told me you hired Neil Crawford, Gloria said. You're building a case, so am I. I think we should coordinate. 2 hours later, I sat across from her at a coffee shop on Northwest 23rd. She slid a folder across the table without a word. Bank statements, hotel receipts, always the Heathman, always room 517, photographs, time-stamped, cataloged, clean. I looked at her. What are you proposing? We file on the same day, same courthouse? Coordinated. Make it impossible to contain or settle quietly. I thought about the cabin recording. Larry's voice. Business asset that needed to be managed. I thought about Donna building a fake medical file on me while she called me Dad at Christmas. Let's do it, I said. We shook hands across the table. The confrontation happened at the Heathman Hotel. I booked the private dining room adjacent to room 517, the same room where Patrick and Sandra had spent 30 years of Thursday afternoons. Neil had already installed recording equipment. Oregon is a one-party consent state. I was the party consenting. Sandra arrived first at 6:03 p.m. wearing a navy dress I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked hopeful. She probably thought I was trying to work things out. Patrick walked in 2 minutes later in his charcoal suit, smile already forming. Then he saw Sandra sitting there, and the smile dropped. David, your assistant said. He stopped. I didn't realize Sandra would be here. Sit down, Patrick. Something in my voice made them both go still. Sandra gripped the edge of the table. Patrick sat slowly, like a man lowering himself into cold water. I opened my portfolio and started laying things out. The DNA reports first. Scott Harmon, 0.00%. Patrick Dawson, 99.97% for Donna. 99.98% for Larry. Then the letters. 19 years of Patrick's handwriting spread across the white tablecloth. Then Gloria's photographs, Patrick and Sandra entering this hotel, walking in the parking garage, sitting in his car outside our house. Patrick stared at the letters. Those could be, this isn't what it... Don't, I said. I picked up my phone and pressed play. Sandra's voice from the cabin filled the room, then Larry's. Time to accelerate the power of attorney plan. Then Donna's, I've been documenting behavioral changes for 6 months. I let it run for 2 minutes, then I stopped it. The room was quiet. 38 years, I said. You let me believe those kids were mine. You let me pay for their lives, raise them, love them. You let Patrick deliver his own children while I stood in that room crying, and not once in 38 years did you tell me the truth. Sandra's eyes filled. David, please, I can explain. When did they find out? Donna and Larry. When did you tell them? Silence. Sandra, when? 2013, she whispered. Donna was 16. Larry was 13, 12 years. They had known for 12 years. Every holiday, every Father's Day card, every tuition check I wrote, they knew. Patrick stood up. I stepped between him and the door. Sit down, I said, or my next call is to the Oregon Medical Board. You falsified birth certificates, Patrick. You conspired with Beverly to alter medical records going back to 1987. You want to explain that to investigators with badges, or do you want to sit back down? He sat. I collected my documents, put them back in the portfolio, and snapped it shut. Divorce papers will be served tomorrow morning. Gloria and I are filing simultaneously. The medical board complaint goes in at 9 a.m. The IRS referral for $336,000 in unreported transfers goes in right after. Sandra made a sound I'd never heard from her before. Patrick stared at the table. I walked to the door and paused, looked back at them once. They had spent 38 years building a version of my life that wasn't real. I had spent 11 minutes sitting in a driveway, unable to go inside my own house. Now they were the ones who couldn't move. Part 1, I said. And I walked out. I drove to Riverside Park after that, parked near the fountain, and sat on a bench looking at the water. It was cold, April in Portland. That's when it hit me. Not the anger. I'd been carrying that for weeks. It was something else. I thought about teaching Donna to swim at 6 years old, her arms flailing, trusting me completely, not to let her go under. I thought about Larry's face the first time he drove a nail straight on a job site with me. How proud he was, how proud I was. I sat on that bench and I fell apart. Quietly, nobody around to see it. Gerald showed up 20 minutes later. I hadn't called him. He'd been following at a distance all night. His idea, not mine. He sat down next to me and didn't say a word. Handed me a bandana at some point. We sat there until I was done. You did the right thing in there, he said finally. I know, I said. It doesn't feel like anything yet. It will, give it time. Sandra moved out on April 18th. I came home at 4 p.m. to find half the closet empty. Her Chanel perfume gone from the dresser, a note on the kitchen counter written on a grocery receipt. I'm staying with Beverly. I'll send someone for the rest. I'm sorry, Scott. I never wanted it to end this way. I threw it in the trash. Gerald came over that evening. We changed the locks together. When we finished, he handed me the new keys and said, "She doesn't live here anymore." That was the right thing to say. Roy executed all 5 fronts the following week. Divorce filing. Civil suit for $2,000 to $1,000 in damages. Fraud, conspiracy, emotional distress, unjust enrichment. Full estate revision removing Donna and Larry as beneficiaries. Harmon Construction transferred into an irrevocable trust with Gerald as successor trustee, untouchable, non-contestable. And the IRS referral filed that same afternoon. Patrick surrendered his medical license in April, paid Gloria $7,500 when she activated the postnuptial. Sandra signed a sworn affidavit at a notary's office. Under penalty of perjury, she admitted to the 38-year affair, confirmed Patrick as the biological father of both children, and acknowledged her role in the conspiracy. She received 10% of the marital estate, $145,000, and agreed to permanent no contact. I wasn't there for the signing. Roy sent me a scanned copy at 4:15 p.m. I read it once, closed my laptop, and went back to work. Donna came to my office on April 20th. She was sitting in the waiting area in her scrubs when I walked out front, eyes red and swollen. She stood up the moment she saw me. "Please," she said. 5 minutes. I looked at her for a moment. Then I turned around and went back to my desk. She tried again 2 days later. I had Marilyn, my bookkeeper, tell her I wasn't available. Larry sent emails, subject lines like legal clarification, and we need to talk. I forwarded them all to Roy without reading past the first line. Gerald talked me into giving them a chance. Not a meeting, not a phone call. Letters, real ones, minimum 2 pages, no excuses, no blame shifting, full accountability. Deadline June 1st. If the letters are garbage, you throw them away, he said. But at least you gave them the chance to be honest. I agreed. Gerald called them both that night. He told me later they both cried. The letters arrived on June 1st, 2 envelopes. Gerald brought them over himself and handed them to me at the door. "You want me to stay?" he asked. "No? I'll call you after." I took them upstairs to my office, the room that used to be Larry's, walls still painted pale blue, and sat at the desk. Set both envelopes in front of me. Looked at them for a while. I opened Donna's first 3 pages, handwritten. She said she almost addressed it to David because she wasn't sure she had the right to call me Dad anymore. She found out when she was 16. Sandra sat her down and told her Patrick was her biological father, that telling me would destroy the family. Donna said she was confused and scared and told herself it didn't matter, that biology was just biology, that I loved her and she loved me, and that was enough. She said she knew now. That was a lie she told herself so she wouldn't have to face the consequences. She said the power of attorney plan was monstrous. She knew that the moment she agreed to it and did it anyway because she was scared and greedy and she wanted the security. She wrote those words exactly, scared, greedy, and she had no excuse that didn't make it worse. She'd been in therapy twice a week since May. She was volunteering at a domestic violence shelter in Portland 20 hours a month, working with women who had been betrayed by the people closest to them. She said it was teaching her more about what she had done to me than anything else could. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She said she was trying to become someone who deserved to ask for it someday. I set it down, picked up Larry's, typed 2.5 pages. He said he wasn't sure he should call me Dad because he hadn't earned that right. Not since he decided I wasn't worth the truth. He found out when he was 13. He said he spent years turning his anger in the wrong direction, convincing himself that because Patrick was his biological father, nothing I had done counted. He called it the logic of a hurt kid who never grew out of it. He said he carried that into adulthood and let it curdle into entitlement. He looked at Harmon Construction and told himself I owed him something. The power of attorney plan was his idea. He said it plainly. No softening. February 2024. He researched it, found the legal mechanism, consulted an attorney, and pitched it to Sandra and Donna. He called it what it was, theft, premeditated and calculated. He was 97 days sober when he wrote the letter. AA meetings 5 times a week. A sponsor named Walt, 14 years sober. Freelance work at $3,200 a month instead of the $8,400 a month he'd been making at his old job. He said the pay cut was fine. The work was honest and he could look at it without feeling sick. He had filed paperwork to legally keep the last name Harmon. Not Dawson, never Dawson. He wrote, "You gave me that name, I disgraced it. I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to deserve it. I read both letters twice. Then I called Gerald. They're not garbage, I said. No, he said. They're not. I'm not ready to see them. I know. I'll tell them you read the letters and you need time." That was enough for now. On November 20th, a little past 11 at night, my phone rang. Dennis Torres, Donna's husband. "I'm sorry to call this late, Mr. Harmon. Donna's in labor, 36 weeks, a little early. She's at Cedar Valley. The doctors say the baby is strong." He paused. "She's asking for you. I told her I'd call, but I also told her you might say no, and that's completely okay. This is your call." I sat on the edge of the bed, looked at the clock. I thought about Donna at 6 years old, arms flailing in the pool, completely trusting me not to let her go under. "What floor?" I asked. "4th. Room 414. "I'll be there." I drove to Cedar Valley Medical at 11:40 p.m. Same hospital where Beverly had altered my records. Same building where the lie had been maintained for decades. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and found Dennis in the waiting room. He stood up when he saw me and hugged me before I could say a word. At 1:18 a.m., a nurse came out smiling. A girl, 5 palbus 4 Oz, healthy, mom doing well. Lily Rose Torres. I followed Dennis into the room. Donna was propped up in the hospital bed, pale and exhausted, holding a small bundle in a pink and white striped blanket. When she saw me in the doorway, she started crying without making any sound. I walked over and looked down at the baby. Dark hair, a lot of it. Dennis's nose. Donna's chin. Eyes closed, mouth slightly open, one tiny fist curled against her cheek. "She's beautiful," I said. Donna couldn't speak for a moment. Then, "I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't." I reached out and touched Lily's hand. Her fingers were smaller than anything I'd ever held. She didn't wake up. Just curled her fist a little tighter for a second. Like she knew someone was there. I stayed 20 minutes. Mostly just stood there watching her sleep. Before I left, I told Donna to rest and take care of her daughter. "I will," she said. "I promise." I nodded and walked out. In the parking garage, I sat in my truck for a while, called Gerald. He answered on the second ring. "The baby came," I said. "Lily Rose, 5-pound S4OC. She's healthy." Gerald was quiet. "Then, how do you feel?" I thought about it honestly. "Not angry," I said. "Sad, maybe. For the years we lost. For what Lily Rose is going to grow up knowing about her family." I looked at the concrete wall in front of me, but not empty. "That's the first time in 8 months I haven't felt empty." "That's healing, Scott," he said. "That's what it feels like at the start." I drove home through empty streets, Portland at 2 in the morning, wet pavement, amber streetlights. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat for a moment looking at the house. Too quiet, too big. But mine. Inside, I didn't turn on the lights. On the mantle was a photo I had turned face down back in April. Donna at her nursing school graduation, white coat, big smile. I had paid $47,000 for that degree. I had sat in the auditorium and clapped until my hands hurt. I turned the photo back around, then I went upstairs, lay down fully dressed, and closed my eyes. By December, the picture looked different. Sandra was in Eugene with $145,000 and a public record of a 38-year affair. Patrick was in Arizona. His license was gone. Harmon Construction had its best year on record, $1.9 million in revenue. 48 burst employees who showed up every day and did honest work. I added a $100,000 education trust for Lily Rose in my will. Gerald is trustee. She had no part in any of this. She deserves a future. Larry hit 6 months sober on December 3rd, sent me a photo of his AA chip. I replied with 3 words, proud of you. First time I'd said anything like that to him since March. It cost me something to type it. I sent it anyway. I started a woodworking class at the community center on Saturday mornings. Mostly younger guys, 20s and 30s, learning basic joinery. How to measure twice. How to build something that holds together. I don't know exactly when that started to mean something to me, but it did. On the last night of December, Gerald and I sat on his back porch under a clear, cold sky. He handed me a beer. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about it, only that I didn't ask harder questions sooner, I said. I trusted completely and never verified. That cost me 38 years of truth. He nodded. We sat quiet for a while. Then he asked if I thought I'd ever fully forgive Donna and Larry. Forgiveness isn't a decision you make once, I said. It's something you choose every day. Right now I'm choosing to let them earn it. That's the best I've got. Gerald raised his bottle. That's enough. Yeah, it was. I didn't lose a family this year. I lost a lie, and for the first time in 38 years, everything I'm standing on is real. If this story reached you, I want to ask you something honestly. At what point would you have walked away? Before the DNA results came back? Or after you heard your own child call you a business asset that needed to be managed? Drop your answer below. I read every one.